How you guys doing? T of 2Dove here, and today, well, I kind of knew this was coming for a while. I had a feeling in my gut. I kind of knew these side grades were going to become a thing. I just didn't expect them to tell us all this, so, again, you've probably seen, people are all jumping on this bandwagon, but this is a big, juicy piece of, I don't know where I'm going. Point being, this is a big deal. We all got to talk about it, so let's hop right into it. Right off the bat, disclaimer that these are all proposed weapon changes, come with the Pyro and or Jungle update, Valve is telling us as such. And if you don't like anything, you want to add something to a weapon, you want to remove it, you want to fix it, you want to complain, they will change it based on community feedback. And if you send Valve on the Team Fortress website feedback through the contact form under Contact Us, they will take it into consideration. Now granted, odds are if you're like, oh, the base jumper should have space lasers and cows that fly out of it, that's probably not going to happen. But if everyone's like, oh, the ambassador, something about that tweak seems really wrong and random, then they'll probably listen. So just keep that in mind. We do have a voice here. We do have feedback that we are allowed to use. Valve noted that the list is not complete, so there are some things we don't know about yet. The list is still being worked on, and some classes are changing more than others, and nothing on this list is final. Now, again, keep that all in mind. And this is official. This is from Valve. So you can read the whole list for yourself in the description. You can go along with me. But I'm going to kind of gloss over the whole list. Some I'm going to go into detail on. Some I'm not going to. It depends on how important the change seems or how interesting it is. So the very first thing on the list, it's multi-class, and it's the panic attack. And their goal for it was to make the weapon immediately usable. And they changed a bunch of stats, and personally, I don't think I'm ever going to use it. The stats do make it a shotgun side grade, but something about, I don't know, something about the stats seems a little bit weird to me. It doesn't seem 100% reliable with how the bullet spread is going to work. So basically, they're changing up the whole mechanic of the weapon. It's going to be a new weapon. I'm not that big of a fan about it. The next thing is the spy. So this is the arguably the most hated part of this update list. And if you do hate this change, feel free to contact Valve. They are changing the ambassador. And what they are doing, right, or at least what they want to do, is they want to make it so that the spy can't snipe people across the map. Because that's not what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to assassinate up close, not really at far. So the changes that they are proposing are that first shots are no longer perfectly accurate, and bullet spread is instead reduced by 50%. So if you're trying to shoot someone from afar, it's not really going to be reliable. It can work, it cannot work. It seems a little bit, like, random there, which I'm not a fan of. But up close, apparently it's going to work like the same old ambassador. So basically they are making it from a long range and close range weapon to just close range, because they don't think the spy is supposed to do that. And I personally think that's sensible, and it's overdue, because it needs to be done. The goal is okay, but the gimmick of the random spread, something about that seems wrong to me. I don't know, I just feel like they should make, like, damage fall off. Like, it should still do 102 up close, 102 medium range, but if you're sniping from across the map, it should do a lot less. The next weapon is still for spy. It is the Dead Ringer, and this one, honestly, I didn't really see this coming, but in retrospect, it has a pretty, in its current state, it is pretty annoying. So what Valve said is that Spy can use the Feign Death really frequently thanks to ammo packs, and their goal is to make it so that Spies can't do that as much by removing easy methods to do it. And the only change is that ammo kits and dispensers no longer refill the cloak meter if you have the Dead Ringer out. Which I personally think is fair and balanced, but it also makes the other invisibility watches extremely more overpowered than the Ringer, so I don't really think the Ringer is going to be used that often, if at all. And you do have to keep in mind, though, like, it does make it so that pairing the Dead Ringer with the Latron J or the Big Earner will give you cloak back on kill. So those will become desired weapons if you are using the Dead Ringer. Now, they also wanted to change a spy knife, the Your Eternal Reward, and funnily enough, apparently it's one of the least used spy knives, which would honestly make sense, because I don't think I've ever used it. And so what they're doing is they're removing the cannot disguise penalty, which is a big deal. It's a pretty big deal. But what they did to make that balanced and kind of stay true to the current weapons theme is that if you want to disguise using your disguise kit, you're going to use all of your cloak. And it functions the same as it does now if you get a backstab. If you get a backstab, you get a free disguise. It doesn't drain your cloak. But you're basically given a way to intercept the enemy besides relying on someone to be in a really weird place and being all kind of stupid. But the main downside is that it increases your cloak's drain rate by 50%, which is really, really massive. And honestly, I feel like it's going to make it so that you're going to almost have to use the Saharan Spy's loadout in order to be like a proficient spy with those items. Because in one way or another, you're going to have to pair it with the Latron J, I think. I think that's what they're going for. A lot of changing out your primary weapon in order to make your secondaries and watches more powerful. Now, the next class that Valve went ham on was the Scout, and they really, they wanted to get all of his weapons into a good side grade place, and looking at the list, they really did it. So first off, there is the Sandman, and the changes are that long-range ball impacts no longer remove the victim's ability to fire their weapon, but they are still slowed, which pretty much means if you're hit with the ball, you can fight back, but you're slowed down. So they made it so that you can actually fight back against the Sandman. They've changed a few stats, tinkered it to make it more of a fair weapon, more of a constant weapon, and it looks like it's kind of just, they want you to use it as a light version of crowd control, and it has potential. It seems more fair to me, but it no longer combos with the cleaver, so that is important to note. So the Sandman is actually in a very good place with these proposed changes. The next weapon is a Scout secondary as well. It is the Bonk Atomic Punch, and their goal of the weapon was to make it so that you could go in really contested areas, kind of distract, kind of just go through an area, and they think it does it pretty well right now, but their issue is that it doesn't take skill or have a downside to do it, which I personally disagree. I feel like not having a pistol is a pretty big downside to using the Bonk Punch, but nonetheless, they made it so that while you are bonked, all the damage you take, by the end of the bonk, if you took a lot of damage, you're going to be pretty slow. If you take a little damage, you're going to be a little bit slowed. You're a sitting duck if you don't get out of there. So your main objective with the bonk now is to pop in, pop out, distract, leave, or else you'll be a sitting duck and you will feed. Alright, so this next one is actually a pretty big deal. The Pretty Boy's pocket pistol, it's been in a weird place. It used to be good because it had a really strong passive. Then it became total trash because of that damage penalty, or the damage taken rather. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to make it less of a liability, and that you can get health quick with a decent burst at the expense of total damage. So what they did is they increased your firing speed, which is great. I mean, it's not bad, it's not good, it's okay. And they made it so that you can get more health per hit, and that you no longer take more damage, but your clip size is reduced, so you basically heal more, but do less damage with it. Which is, honestly, I think it's a fair trade-off. I think it's a pretty good side grade. Now, this next one is extremely, people wanted this for so long, because it just was so annoying. The Criticola is finally getting what it deserves, and Valve's goal for it was to make it so that it would take more effort, more decision, more thought to make it that you can go in, get some really high damage, and you will actually be penalized for it. And they did exactly that. So while you drink it, every attack you make makes you marked for death for 5 seconds, and it doesn't stack. So what I'm assuming that means is when you drink it, when you attack someone, you're marked for death for 5 seconds. So if you attack them at the very start, you'll have 5 seconds of marked for death. If you attack them at the very end, you will be marked for death at the end of that 5 seconds. And what they did, which is extremely important, is that they removed the move speed bonus, which makes it so that it's going to be more of a little mini Kritzkrieg that you decide when to do, and it makes you a sitting duck because you can't pop out of there. And it's pretty important because they just made it work. It's good. And they made kind of Scout have a sacrificial pick damage class when used. The next thing they changed, we're moving on to melees for a bit, and then it goes back to secondary. I don't know how they organized this, but hey, it's fine. They're changing things. So what they did is they were changing the atomizer, because their jump, way too powerful as a passive, so they made it so that you're only able to do a triple jump when the bat is out, so it's very obvious to your enemy when you're going to try to triple jump, or when you're going to try to feign a triple jump. So now it makes the triple jump more predictable, so that way it is a downside, and you can't really do damage with the bat too much, and you're probably never going to use it to attack people, so I would argue it's now in a pretty good place, definitely balanced. Now the very last weapon for Scout that they changed is the Flying Guillotine, and they wanted it to feel less random and reward accuracy. So it no longer crits, it no longer mini crits, and from long range hits, it recharges faster, and that's about it. I think it does like, what, 40 damage and then some bleeding? So it's a powerful weapon, it does its thing, but it can never crit or mini crit by distance anymore. So it's a good secondary, you just have to be good with projectiles, and then you might actually use it over the pistol. Who knows? I think it's pretty good. Now these next changes are big for me. I personally think this is making the fun elements of TF2 viable, which is awesome. So what they're doing is they're changing the base jumper. Now this is actually a nerf, so this is kind of saddening, but it's going to be able to be seen in higher play now, because they're probably not going to ban it after this. So what they're doing is you can't really just kind of spam it in the air, so you actually, once you deploy it, you have to either commit or drop down and take fall damage, and that while you're using it, you can't really strafe as much. They're cutting that in half. So you're going to be more predictable in the air, which I think is kind of odd, because that's what they said the original problem of implementing the weapon was. They didn't want it to be a sitting duck thing. so I don't know how that's going to turn out. I feel like its only real use is to make it, you can only really just take out sentries from a distance with it, and not taking fall damage, so I don't see why you would ever really want to use it. Now the next thing, which I honestly think is, this is I want to say groundbreaking, like this will be possibly meta changing for the 6's meta. Like, I'm feeling it, I don't know if it will be, but I feel like it has potential. People are willing to kind of adventure out. And so the man treads, you don't really get the stomp too much, Valve acknowledges that, and the gunboats are usually better. But what they did is they made it so that when you're using the man treads, the pyro can't knock you back as far with air blast, because before, for whatever reason, they didn't include that in the knockback reduction. Now they are. And that you get 200% air control while blast jumping, which means you're going to have a lot more control. You're going to have a lot less knockback, which means you can probably use it during Ubers against sentries. And the really cool thing about it all is that that extra 200 air control, you pair that with the Liberty Launcher, you get the most obnoxious, most mobile roamer possible. Now the damage is going to be a problem there, but you could be the most annoying distraction as soldier, which I really want people to do. I hope people do it. I want to see Liberty Launcher and man treads becoming a thing for roamers. Moving on to the sniper, they are changing all of the shields, which is amazing. This is also a long overdue thing. So the first things first, the Darwin's Danger Shield is becoming a pyro counter, not a sniper counter. So if you're spamming out a sniper with flares, with scorch shots, whatever, the Danger Shield is used to counter pyros, which is awesome. It no longer prevents snipers from sniping. And so the next thing is the Razorback, and they wanted it so that pocketed snipers in kind of competitive modes like Highlander aren't invincible. So what they did is that he can't get any overheal, which means the Ambassador, the Diamondback are going to be really powerful against a Razorback sniper. So odds are Razorback in pubs is going to be extremely useful because no one's really going to want to shoot, no one's going to overheal the sniper in the first place. That's pretty much unchanged. But in competitive, you're going to have it so that the sniper can never be overhealed with the Razorback, if I'm doing my math right. I might be wrong, but it looks like he's not going to have any overheal. Alright, moving on to the medic, and now this is what I'm most excited for. We have side grades, we have a little bit of nerfs which are fair. They're fair. They're fair. And so this first one is a big deal, the Vita Saw. The Vita Saw, I don't know how you say it. But it used to be so that if you were to die, you would keep 20% of your Uber on death or something, no matter what. Whereas the Vita Saw now has a high risk, high reward. And so they honestly did their goal quite well for that. And so I love this so much. They added an organs collecting thing where you hit someone with a saw, you get an organ. And for every organ you get, you save 15% of your Uber charge on death. And it caps at 60%. So if you get, I believe, 4 hits, you would keep 60% of your Uber if you died. And odds are you're never going to get those hits, so it's a pretty fair compromise. It's the Uber Saw, but in a later life, which I think it's pretty important. And it's a side grade to the Uber Saw now. It's the same risks, and it's a similar reward. And it forces the team to treat a lone medic differently. Now, granted, high leagues, I don't think people will want to use this much, but at lower leagues, it will become a big thing. And the question really is, do you want that Uber right then and now, or an advantage if you die? I mean, also, you could have even Ubers, but point being, it's either you get the advantage right then in the fight, or you're able to save your Uber for the next fight and be at equal standing. Now, this next thing is also for medic. It's a little bit big, a little bit small. They're nerfing the Crusader's crossbow a little bit. They're not changing the healing at all, which I find great. I think that's, like, they're not nerfing it too badly here. And what they're doing is so that your Uber charge has a crit heals, a crit Uber charge type thing, so it can't build faster than the Medigun now. So that is great, it's balanced. I thought it was going to be nerfed more, but they still haven't buffed the syringe guns, which I find weird, so you're still going to be using the crossbow instead of syringe guns, so they probably want to get on those syringe guns, make those a little bit better, but all in all, could have been worse, not too shabby. Now, this next thing is extremely important. It's about the heavy. I mean, it was Pyro versus heavy, and in this little change we're seeing, they're really helping heavy out here. Well, for the first part anyway. So what they're doing is that they're kind of reverting his damage and accuracy penalty. Before, you'd have to shoot for a second before you reached your full potential. Now, it's that you only have to rev up for a second. So if you stay revved, you'll keep your damage, you'll keep your accuracy. So all miniguns have got a buff, and it's going to be a lot better, and heavy's going to be a lot more viable. Now, they've also changed all of his speed melees. The gloves of running urgently is really, it's weird. So what they did is that they made it so that your max health is drained by 10 for every second you have it out, and then when you holster it, it slowly regenerates. And they didn't tell us how much it'll regenerate, which I think kind of matters. But, so every time you deploy the gloves, the drain rate is accelerated. So point being, you're no longer marked for death, you're kind of subtly marked for death. So you're sacrificing your health for speed. Which honestly, I think that's a fair trade-off. It's fair. It might make you have to wait a little bit before you actually enter the fight. Or you might go in with an overheal. And so they also changed the eviction notice, and it's kind of like a... It's like the light version of the gloves are running urgently. I really don't feel like you're ever going to want to fight with the eviction notice or the gloves are running urgently. Okay, it was not my... I did not typo my notes. Valve calls it the Fist of Steel. Not fists, fist. They made it so that you can't be a walking tank with it. You're able to withstand damage, but you can't survive forever. Because the issue was, if you were overhealed, if you were by the cart or by a dispenser, you could tank way more damage than you were ever supposed to. So instead, they kind of want you to use it maybe as a quick drive-by, kind of past something that's shooting you, or get out alive. And it's used to escape battle, partially tank it, but if you are tanking, you will eventually die unless you get out of there. The last change is short but sweet. The engineer, the rescue ranger, now uses metal to heal, and so they gave an example here. At a 4-to-1 health to metal ratio, so if you repair 60 damage, it costs you 15 metal. And you can still teleport the sentry away, and you can still repair from a distance, so the weapon still does its purpose. It's both viable and not viable at the same time. So I could see the shotgun coming into play. Yeah, I think they just kind of made it rounded. I really don't get why they did this, but I guess for those engineers that set up on 2 Fort's roof, you're going to have a much more annoying time doing that now. Anyhow, that has been the whole list. I can barely feel my voice. I couldn't feel it to begin with. These allergies are killing me. But that is the entire list. Make sure to check everything out for yourself in detail, because I did gloss over a lot of the stats. Make sure to email Valve feedback. And again, as I said in the beginning, nothing here is final. There's more changes we don't even know about yet. So maybe the Bison and Clydamore... I'm going to call it Clydamore. Bison and Clydamore could be saved after all. They're just saving it as a little surprise. And my only real worry with all this, besides the Ambassador, which I personally disagree with entirely, that randomness thing, they got the right idea, they just have the wrong way to do it. And my only real worry about this whole thing is that they're going to make the learning curve higher for TF2 and maybe less newbie friendly. If you guys want to know any kind of like additional thoughts on these changes, if you want to propose changes, if you want to kind of just talk to me about them, this is like, honestly, I love talking about these like concepts. I love kind of loadout crafting, like my Liberty Launcher and Man Treads. Like, I really want to see that. So again, just talk to me in the comments. I will be more than happy to reply. And as always, guys, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in a future video.